Welcome, weary traveler, to a quiet journey through the mists of time. Settle in, find a comfortable place, and let your mind relax as we begin our gentle descent into a world of ancient dynasties, imperial courts, and one of history's most extraordinary figures. Tonight, we'll be exploring the life and times of Wu Zetian, the only female emperor in China's long and magnificent history. This is a story of ambition, power, intellect, and profound change. A narrative that unfolds not with a clamor, but with the quiet dignity of 1,000 years of history. Imagine, if you will, the vast, sprawling landscapes of 7th century China. The air is still, save for the rustle of bamboo leaves and the distant chimes from a Buddhist temple. The Tang Dynasty is in its early splendor, a golden age of culture, art, and intellectual pursuit. It is a time when the capital city of Chang'an, a place we'll come to know well, is a bustling metropolis. The largest in the world, a hub of international trade, scholarship, and cosmopolitan life. Its symmetrical streets and grand palaces are a testament to the order and prosperity that define this era. This is the world into which our protagonist is born, a world governed by ancient traditions, strict hierarchies, and the powerful, unyielding belief in a patriarchal order. Our journey begins not with the roar of a dragon, but with the quiet birth of a girl in the year 624. Born into a family of some status, Wu Zetian's early life was far from the imperial palace. Her father, a respected official, and her mother, a woman of the Yang family of the former Sui imperial lineage, provided her with a privileged upbringing that was unusual for a girl of her time. Unlike many of her female contemporaries, she received an education in classics, history, poetry, and music. This early exposure to the intellectual world would become the bedrock of her future success. It was in these formative years that the seeds of her sharp wit and formidable intelligence were sown, setting her on a path that would defy all expectations and shatter the very foundations of her society. To truly understand Wu Zetian, we must first understand the world she inhabited. The Tang Dynasty, 608 to 907 CE, was a period of remarkable openness and cultural exchange. The Silk Road was a vibrant artery connecting China to the West, bringing with it not only goods, but new ideas, religions, and artistic styles. Buddhism, in particular, was flourishing, its serene philosophies and intricate art forms weaving themselves into the fabric of Chinese life. The imperial court, a place of immense political intrigue and social ceremony, was the heart of this empire. It was a place of both great opportunity and great danger, a stage where one's fortunes could rise and fall with the turn of a single phrase or the whisper of a rumor. Our story is not simply about a woman who became a ruler. It is about the intricate dance of power within this court. We will follow her journey from a low-ranking concubine to the emperor's most trusted advisor, and finally, to the throne itself. We will explore her political maneuvering, her scholarly pursuits, and her controversial, often ruthless methods. But we will also delve into her legacy, her profound impact on Chinese society, her reforms, her patronage of the arts, and the enduring debate over her place in history. Was she a benevolent ruler who ushered in a new era of progress, or a tyrannical despot who would stop at nothing to secure her power? The answer, as is often the case with history, is not a simple one. As the moonlight streams through your window, let yourself be transported to a time when eunuchs guarded the palace gates, scholars debated in hushed tones, and the fate of an empire rested on the shoulders of one woman. This is a narrative woven with threads of personal struggle, political ambition, and a nation's destiny. We will not rush. We will take our time, allowing each detail to unfurl like a scroll of ancient calligraphy. Tonight, we will not merely recount facts. We will immerse ourselves in a forgotten world, feeling the cool stone of the palace courtyards, hearing the soft rustle of silk garments, and witnessing the quiet strength of a woman who dared to sit on the dragon throne. So, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let the gentle rhythm of this story guide you into a peaceful, restful state. Our journey begins in the early years of the Tang Dynasty, a period of immense cultural and political transformation. To understand the remarkable trajectory of Wu Zetian's life, we must first picture the world into which she was born. It is the year 624, and the new Tang Dynasty, founded just 6 years earlier by Emperor Gaozong, is still solidifying its power. The civil wars of the previous decades have given way to a fragile peace, and the empire is beginning to rebuild. Wu Zetian enters this world not as a princess, but as the daughter of a respected official. Her father, Wu Xie, was a key figure in the founding of the Tang Dynasty, and this service to the new imperial house granted his family a place of privilege. This was an era where one's status was largely determined by lineage and connection to power. And the Wu family, while not part of the old aristocracy, possessed a social standing that would open doors for their daughter. From a young age, Wu Zetian was afforded an education that was uncommon for girls of her time. She studied the Confucian classics, history, and literature, and this early intellectual training would become the bedrock of her future success. While many aristocratic girls were trained primarily in household management and fine arts, Wu Zetian's mind was being sharpened for the world of politics and governance. This was a crucial factor in her development. She was not simply a beautiful girl from a good family, but a clever and well-read individual, capable of engaging with the most learned men in the empire. At the age of 13, Wu Zetian's life took a fateful turn. Her beauty and reputation for intelligence came to the attention of Emperor Taizong, the second emperor of the Tang Dynasty. Like many promising young women of the time, she was summoned to the imperial palace to become a concubine. This was not a romantic arrangement, but a political and social one. The imperial harem was a strict hierarchy, and entry at its lowest rank, that of a Kai Ren or talented lady, was not a guarantee of a comfortable life. It was a world of intense competition, subtle rivalries, and a constant struggle for the emperor's favor. Life within the palace walls was a quiet and often lonely existence. The daily routines were governed by rigid protocols and the pursuit of imperial attention. Young women like Wu Zetian lived in secluded courtyards, their days filled with study, music, and the hope of a summons from the emperor. The physical environment of the palace itself was a spectacle of order and grandeur. The Daming Palace, the primary imperial residence, was a city within a city, with its vast courtyards, ornamental gardens, and a labyrinth of corridors. It was a place of immense wealth and power, but also one of confinement. For Wu Zetian, the initial years in the harem were not marked by meteoric success. Unlike some of her rivals, she did not immediately catch the emperor's eye. She was not a primary favorite, and her position remained low. However, this period of relative obscurity was not wasted. It was a time for observation and learning. She quietly studied the intricate workings of the court, the complex relationships between the different factions, and the personalities of the men and women who held power. She learned patience and discretion, two skills that would serve her well in the future. She learned to read the unspoken cues of the imperial court, to understand the flow of influence, and to identify the vulnerabilities and strengths of those around her. This was her apprenticeship, a silent education in the dark arts of imperial politics. Her status as a low-ranking concubine meant that she was largely invisible to the powerful figures of the court. She was not a threat, and this lack of attention allowed her to develop her intellect and political acumen without the intense scrutiny that others faced. She read widely, absorbing everything from military strategy to the intricate rituals of the court. It was during this time that she began to cultivate a relationship with Li Ji, who would one day become Emperor Gaozong. He was the 9th son of Emperor Taizong, and at this point, not the heir apparent. Their connection, while seemingly insignificant at the time, was a seed planted in the fertile ground of the imperial court, waiting for the right moment to grow. This quiet period of her life was the prologue to a much larger story, a testament to the fact that even in the most restricted of environments, a brilliant mind can find a way to flourish. She was preparing for a future she couldn't yet imagine, a future that would shatter all precedents and forever change the course of Chinese history. Following the death of Emperor Taizong in 649 CE, ancient Chinese tradition dictated that his concubines, who had not borne him sons, were to be sent to a Buddhist monastery to live out their days as nuns. This was a fate of obscurity and spiritual devotion, a final and definitive withdrawal from the world of power. For Wu Zetian, this seemed to be the end of her imperial journey. She was transferred to the Ganya Monastery, a place of serene seclusion, where she would live a life of prayer and quiet reflection. The grand palace life, with its intricate intrigues and subtle power struggles, was seemingly behind her. However, fate had other plans. The new emperor, Emperor Gaozong, was none other than the young prince, Li Ji, with whom Wu Zetian had cultivated a quiet connection during her time in his father's harem. It is said that he had developed a deep affection for her, and even though he was now the son of heaven, he could not forget her. In a twist of fate that was highly unusual, he summoned her back to the palace. The official story is that he visited the monastery to pay respects to his late father and saw her there, her beauty and grace rekindling his affection. The truth, however, is likely more complex, involving a deliberate maneuver on his part to bring her back into his life. He was a man of a more gentle and less assertive nature than his father, and he found in Wu Zetian not just a lover, but an intellectual equal and a keen political mind. Her return to the palace marked the beginning of her dramatic ascent. She re-entered the harem, but this time she was not content to remain in the shadows. The existing power structure within the court was dominated by Empress Wang and her rival, consort Zhou. Wu Zetian, with her sharp intellect and political acumen, quickly understood the dynamics of their rivalry. Instead of directly confronting the Empress, she chose a more subtle and devastating strategy. She aligned herself with the Empress, presenting herself as a non-threatening ally against the more popular consort Zhou. This calculated move allowed her to gain the Empress's trust and, more importantly, to get closer to the Emperor. As she gained influence, Wu Zetian began to dismantle the existing power structure from within. She understood that a single, direct blow would be ineffective. Instead, she used a series of calculated steps, each designed to chip away at the Empress's position. She secured the Emperor's favor by providing him with sons, a crucial factor in securing one's position in the imperial family. Her first son, Li Hong, was born in 652 CE, and his birth gave her a powerful new form of leverage. She was no longer just a concubine, she was the mother of an imperial prince. But her most notorious and controversial act was yet to come. The story, told by her detractors and often debated by historians, involves the alleged murder of her own infant daughter. The account states that after Empress Wang visited Wu Zetian's chambers and left, Wu Zetian smothered her own child and then accused the Empress of the act. The emperor, heartbroken and already swayed by Wu Zetian's influence, believed the accusation. This event, whether true or a carefully crafted piece of propaganda by her enemies, sealed Empress Wang's fate. It was the final straw that led to her downfall. In 655 CE, Emperor Gaozong, against the counsel of many of his top officials, took the unprecedented step of deposing Empress Wang and elevating Wu Zetian to the position of empress. This decision sent shockwaves through the imperial court. The traditionalists were horrified. A low-ranking concubine who had been banished to a monastery and who had allegedly committed a heinous crime was now to be the mother of the empire. But Emperor Gaozong was captivated by her. He had found in her a partner who could shoulder the burdens of governance, someone who was not only his confidant, but a brilliant strategist. The elevation of Wu Zetian was not just a matter of love or lust, it was a recognition of her intellectual and political power. From this moment on, she was no longer just a member of the harem. She was the second most powerful person in the empire, and her ascent was a testament to her ruthless ambition and her unparalleled skill in navigating the treacherous waters of the Tang court. With her elevation to empress in 655 CE, Wu Zetian's position within the Tang court was cemented, but her power was far from absolute. Her husband, Emperor Gaozong, was the ultimate authority, and the court was still filled with powerful officials and members of the old aristocracy who deeply resented her rise. They saw her as an upstart, a low-born woman who had manipulated her way to the top, and they feared her ambition. This period of her life was defined by the delicate and complex partnership she formed with the emperor, a partnership that would gradually transform from co-rulership to a more dominant role for her. Emperor Gaozong was a complex figure. He had a deep appreciation for culture and scholarship, but he was also prone to illness and was, at times, indecisive. He found in Wu Zetian a decisive and sharp political mind, someone he could trust and rely on. As his health began to decline, he increasingly depended on her to handle the day-to-day affairs of state. They would often sit together in court, a practice known as two sages, Ersheng, with the emperor handling ceremonial duties, and Wu Zetian quietly directing policy from behind a screen. This was a radical departure from tradition. For the first time in Chinese history, a woman was openly sharing the burdens and responsibilities of imperial rule. Wu Zetian's influence was not limited to her informal role as a silent partner. She began to take on more direct administrative duties. She initiated reforms, proposed new policies, and took charge of military campaigns. She proved to be a remarkably effective administrator, with a keen eye for talent and a willingness to defy conventional thinking. She understood that her power base was fragile, and she worked tirelessly to undermine her enemies and build a new network of allies. She filled key government positions with men from less aristocratic backgrounds, a policy that was both a meritocratic reform and a political strategy. These new officials owed their loyalty to her, not to the old guard, and they became her eyes and ears within the bureaucracy. Her reign as empress was also marked by a calculated ruthlessness. To secure her position, she systematically eliminated those who posed a threat. Her rivals, Empress Wang and consort Xiao, were not only deposed but executed, and their families were exiled or killed. This was an era of profound political paranoia. The palace, with its beautiful gardens and serene courtyards, was also a place where a single misstep or a perceived slight could lead to a swift and brutal end. Wu Zetian was a master of this game. She used a network of informers and a secret police to root out dissent, a practice that, while effective in consolidating her power, also cast a long shadow over her legacy. The transition from silent partner to a more active co-ruler was gradual and subtle. Emperor Gaozong's health continued to worsen, and by the 660s, he was often incapacitated by a serious eye ailment. In his absence, Wu Zetian made decisions, issued edicts, and governed the empire in his name. She was, in all but name, the ruler of China. She oversaw major projects, including the construction of magnificent new palaces and the expansion of the civil service examination system, a key reform that would open up government positions to a wider range of people. She also proved herself a competent military strategist, directing campaigns against Korea and the Turkic peoples to the north, securing the borders and expanding the empire's influence. By the time Emperor Gaozong died in 683 CE, Wu Zetian had been ruling the empire in all but name for 2 decades. The foundation of her power was unshakable. She had dismantled the old aristocracy, built her own network of loyal officials, and proven her ability to govern effectively. The stage was set for her final, most audacious move. She had moved from a low-ranking concubine to a powerful empress, and now, with the passing of her husband, she was prepared to take the final step and claim the dragon throne for herself. The death of Emperor Gaozong in 683 CE opened a new and final phase in Wu Zetian's quest for power. With her husband gone, the path to the throne was not a straight one. Her first task was to maneuver around the traditional line of succession, which favored her sons. The new emperor, Emperor Gaozong, was her eldest surviving son, but he proved to be weak and easily manipulated by his own wife, Empress Wei, and her family. He attempted to elevate his father-in-law to a high-ranking position, a move that would have threatened Wu Zetian's authority. This was a direct challenge she could not tolerate. In a swift and decisive move, she deposed him after just 2 months on the throne and exiled him to the provinces. She then placed her younger son, Emperor Ruizong, on the throne. However, unlike his brother, Ruizong was not a puppet, he was merely a figurehead. Wu Zetian had learned from her previous experience and ensured that her second son had no real power. She governed from behind a screen, making all the key decisions and issuing all the major edicts. The imperial court and the bureaucracy were now completely under her control. She had cultivated her own network of loyal officials, purged the old guard, and established a powerful secret police to deal with any remaining dissent. The sons of heaven were her sons in name only. The true power lay with their mother. This period, from 684 CE to 690 CE, was a time of consolidation and preparation. Wu Zetian was not content to simply rule from behind the scenes. She began to systematically build her own political and ideological legitimacy, laying the groundwork for the unprecedented step she was about to take. She initiated a number of grand projects and reforms that were designed to demonstrate her competence and benevolent rule. She expanded the civil service examination system, allowing talented men from common backgrounds to rise through the ranks. This policy not only improved the quality of the bureaucracy, but also created a new class of officials who owed their careers and their loyalty directly to her. This was a brilliant political move, a way to dismantle the power of the old aristocracy and replace it with a merit-based system that benefited her. Simultaneously, she began a subtle but profound ideological campaign. She commissioned scholars to write works that argued for a female ruler, reinterpreting ancient texts and Buddhist scriptures. One of the most significant of these was the Great Cloud Sutra, which prophesied the reincarnation of the Buddha of the future as a female monarch. She cleverly used Buddhism, which was flourishing in China at the time, to justify her ambition. She presented herself as a divine figure, a Maitreya Buddha in the flesh, a compassionate and enlightened ruler who was destined to bring peace and prosperity to the world. This was a radical departure from the Confucian ideals of a patriarchal society, but it was an effective one. The image of the Empress as a living Buddha resonated with the populace and provided a powerful spiritual justification for her rule. Her final move was a carefully orchestrated public campaign. In 690 CE, a group of her loyal officials and Buddhist monks presented her with a petition, urging her to assume the title of emperor. This was no spontaneous act. It was the culmination of years of planning and preparation. The petition was presented not as a request, but as the will of heaven and the people. On the 9th day of the 9th month of the year 690, Wu Zetian ascended the throne and proclaimed a new dynasty, the Zhou dynasty. She had finally cast off the name of Tang and created her own dynastic lineage. She was no longer empress. She was now a male-titled emperor, the first and only woman in China's history to hold that title. The transition from a concubine to the absolute ruler of a vast empire was complete. It was a testament to her political genius, her ruthless will, and her ability to break free from the constraints of a world built by and for men. With the proclamation of the Zhou dynasty in 690 CE, Wu Zetian was no longer ruling in the name of the Tang. She was ruling in her own name, as the Son of Heaven, a title traditionally reserved for male emperors. This was the pinnacle of her audacious journey, and her reign as emperor was a period of both profound progress and brutal repression. She was now the supreme ruler, and her policies and decisions had a direct impact on the lives of millions. One of her most significant contributions was her administrative reform. She understood that to maintain her authority, she needed to create a new, loyal bureaucracy. She continued to expand the imperial examination system, which she had initiated during her time as empress. This system, which tested candidates on their knowledge of the Confucian classics and literature, was a revolutionary concept. It provided a meritocratic pathway to power, allowing men from humble backgrounds to rise to positions of influence based on their talent and intellect, not their family name. This was a direct blow to the old aristocracy, whose power was based on hereditary titles and land ownership. She also created a new class of northern scholars, intellectuals who were handpicked by her for their loyalty and ability, and who formed a key part of her personal administration. As emperor, Wu Zetian also initiated several ambitious public works projects. She ordered the construction of magnificent Buddhist temples and shrines, including the spectacular Longmen grottos, where thousands of carved Buddha statues were created. These projects were not just acts of piety, they were a means of cementing her legitimacy as a divine ruler. The sheer scale and grandeur of these works were designed to inspire awe and demonstrate her power and benevolence. She also oversaw the completion of a number of important infrastructure projects, including canals and bridges, which helped to improve trade and communication throughout the vast empire. However, her reign was not without its darker side. To maintain her absolute power, she employed a ruthless secret police. Led by trusted officials, this network of informers and spies was used to root out any and all dissent. People were encouraged to inform on their neighbors, and accusations, whether true or not, could lead to torture, imprisonment, or execution. The palace, with its beautiful gardens and serene courtyards, was also a place of terror. Many of the old Tang officials and members of the imperial family were killed or exiled. The paranoia was palpable. It was a period of immense political instability, and the fear of being denounced was a constant presence in the lives of both the common people and the high-ranking officials. Wu Zetian also showed a keen interest in foreign policy and military affairs. She continued the expansionist policies of the Tang Dynasty, leading successful campaigns against nomadic tribes and expanding China's influence into Central Asia and the Korean Peninsula. She was a shrewd military strategist, and her ability to manage military affairs from the capital was a testament to her intelligence and administrative skill. Her reign was a period of both internal consolidation and external expansion. While her methods were often brutal, her legacy as a ruler is complex. She was a woman who dared to sit on the dragon throne, and in doing so, she broke a 2,000-year-old tradition. She was a strong and effective leader, and the Chinese empire under her rule was largely prosperous and stable. But she was also a tyrant who was willing to do whatever it took to secure her power. Her reign as emperor was a testament to her unique blend of ambition, intellect, and ruthlessness. She had reached the absolute peak of power, and now she would have to face the challenges of maintaining it. Wu Zetian's ascension to the throne and her establishment of the Zhou dynasty were not met with universal acclaim. While her reforms and administrative competence were undeniable, her gender and her ruthless path to power made her a controversial figure. Her reign was a constant balancing act between projecting an image of divine authority and suppressing the deep-seated opposition that simmered beneath the surface of the court. The primary source of this opposition came from two key groups: the remaining members of the old Tang aristocracy and her own family, particularly her sons. The old guard, the families who had dominated the political landscape for generations, saw her as an illegitimate usurper. They clung to the traditional Confucian view that a woman could not, under any circumstances, rule as emperor. Their opposition was not just political, it was ideological. They believed that by taking the title of Son of Heaven, she had violated the natural order of the universe. This opposition manifested in various ways, from quiet resistance in the bureaucracy to outright rebellion. The most significant of these was the rebellion of Li Jingye in 684 CE, a noble who declared his intention to restore the Tang dynasty. Although the rebellion was swiftly crushed, it demonstrated the deep-seated resentment against her rule and the continued loyalty of some to the previous dynasty. Perhaps the most complex and painful opposition came from within her own family. Her sons, the deposed emperors Gaozong and Ruizong, were a constant source of anxiety. They were the rightful heirs to the throne, and their very existence was a threat to her reign. She had to manage their presence carefully, keeping them under a watchful eye, while at the same time trying to maintain a semblance of familial harmony. This led to a series of purges and forced exiles, as she sought to eliminate any potential rivals. Her family, which should have been her greatest source of support, became a source of political weakness. This internal conflict was a defining feature of her reign, a testament to the brutal reality of power politics in ancient China. To counter this opposition, Wu Zetian employed a range of strategies. She cultivated a network of informers, the dreaded secret police, who were empowered to investigate and arrest anyone suspected of disloyalty. This created a climate of fear and suspicion, where even a whisper of dissent could lead to a brutal end. She also cleverly used religion, particularly Buddhism, to legitimize her rule. She commissioned scholars to write texts that prophesied the rise of a female monarch and presented herself as a living Maitreya Buddha. This religious propaganda was a powerful tool, providing a divine justification for her unconventional rule and appealing to the common people, many of whom were devout Buddhists. She also sought to win over the populace with her reforms. Her expansion of the imperial examination system and her patronage of the arts and literature were popular and effective ways of demonstrating her benevolence and competence. She was a scholar herself, and her respect for learning and talent resonated with many intellectuals. She also implemented a number of agricultural reforms and public works projects that improved the lives of the common people. By showing herself to be a capable and effective ruler, she hoped to silence her critics and prove that her rule was not a violation of the natural order, but a new and prosperous era for China. Ultimately, her reign was a paradox. It was an era of incredible intellectual and cultural flourishing, but it was also a period of profound political fear and repression. She was a brilliant ruler who was willing to employ any means necessary to secure her power. She had broken a 2,000-year-old tradition, but she was never truly free from the shadow of the dynasty she had usurped. The opposition she faced, both from the outside and from within her own family, was a constant reminder of the fragility of her rule and the controversial nature of her legacy. While the political machinations of Wu Zetian's court were brutal and complex, her reign also represents one of the most vibrant periods in Chinese cultural history. As a well-educated and intellectually curious individual, she understood the power of art, literature, and scholarship to legitimize her rule and elevate her dynasty. Her patronage of the arts was not merely a side project. It was a central component of her reign, a conscious effort to usher in a new golden age that would rival and perhaps even surpass that of the early Tang. One of her most significant contributions was her support for a new class of scholars and officials. She championed the imperial examination system, which provided a meritocratic pathway to power for men from diverse backgrounds. She sought out talent not just from the traditional aristocratic families, but from the provinces, from men who had proven their intellectual worth through rigorous testing. This policy led to a flourishing of intellectual life. The court was filled with brilliant minds, and scholarly debates and literary competitions were commonplace. She commissioned the compilation of a massive encyclopedia, the collection of biographies of exemplary women, and she also established a number of literary academies where scholars could pursue their work under imperial patronage. Wu Zetian was also a gifted poet and calligrapher herself. She encouraged the composition of poetry and the production of beautiful calligraphy. She understood that a refined and cultured court was a reflection of a prosperous and stable empire. She also commissioned a series of new characters for the Chinese script, a symbolic act that demonstrated her power to reshape not only the political landscape, but the very language of the empire. Although most of these characters did not survive her reign, their creation was a powerful statement of her authority and her desire to leave a lasting mark on Chinese culture. Her greatest cultural legacy, however, is arguably her patronage of Buddhism. She saw the serene and introspective philosophy of Buddhism as a powerful tool for social and political legitimation. She presented herself as a divine monarch, a living Maitreya Buddha, and she lavished imperial funds on the construction of magnificent Buddhist temples and grottos. The Longmen Grottos near Luoyang are a breathtaking testament to her devotion. Thousands of Buddha statues, from colossal to miniature, were carved into the limestone cliffs. The most famous of these, the colossal Vairocana Buddha, is said to have been modeled after Wu Zetian herself, a symbolic fusion of the sacred and the political. This project was a massive undertaking, requiring the labor of thousands of artisans over many years. It was a visual and spiritual declaration of her divine right to rule. She also encouraged the translation of Buddhist texts and sponsored pilgrimages to India. She understood that the spread of Buddhism would help to unify the diverse peoples of her empire and provide a spiritual justification for her rule. The serene, contemplative nature of Buddhist art and philosophy stands in stark contrast to the brutal political reality of her reign. This duality, the combination of ruthless pragmatism with profound cultural and spiritual patronage, is a key to understanding her complex character. Her reign was a period of incredible intellectual and artistic energy. The poetry of the Tang Dynasty, which is celebrated to this day, flourished under her rule. She brought new minds into the government and new ideas into the court. She broke down old barriers and created a new environment where talent and intellect were rewarded. Her patronage of the arts and her support for scholarship ensured that her era, despite its political turmoil, would be remembered as a high point of Chinese civilization. Her legacy is a testament to the fact that even in a world of political intrigue and bloodshed, a single ruler can have a profound and lasting impact on the cultural soul of a nation. As the years passed, the grip of power that Wu Zetian held so tightly began to loosen. The woman who had, in her youth, been defined by her sharp intellect and unyielding ambition now found herself confronting the universal truths of old age and the natural succession of generations. By the beginning of the 8th century, the once indomitable Empress was in her 80s. Her health began to decline, and her administrative effectiveness waned. The very political system she had so meticulously crafted and controlled began to turn against her. The fear and paranoia that had defined her reign, while effective in suppressing dissent, had also alienated many. The once loyal officials she had elevated now began to plot against her, sensing a change in the political winds. Her own family, particularly her sons, who had been living in the shadows for decades, saw an opportunity to reclaim the throne that they believed was rightfully theirs. The central tension of her later years was not with an external enemy, but with the very people she had struggled to control for so long. The most significant event of her final years was a palace coup. In the year 705 CE, a group of high-ranking officials, including her former favorite prime minister, Zhang Jianji, and a number of palace guards, staged a dramatic takeover. They stormed the imperial palace and forced their way into her chambers. The old empress, frail and ill, was in no position to resist. The conspirators presented her with an ultimatum: abdicate the throne and restore her son, Emperor Gaozong, to power, or face the consequences. The coup, known as the Shenlong Revolution, was a pivotal moment. Wu Zetian, faced with the overwhelming power of the conspirators and her own failing health, had no choice but to concede. On February 20th, 705 CE, she formally abdicated the throne. The Zhou dynasty, which she had so proudly proclaimed just 15 years earlier, was officially dissolved. The Tang dynasty was restored, and her son, Emperor Gaozong, once again ascended to the throne. The woman who had defied tradition, shattered the patriarchal order, and ruled as emperor for so long was now simply a retired monarch. Following her abdication, Wu Zetian was allowed to live out her days in the relative comfort of a secluded palace. She was given the honorary title of Empress Consort and was largely left alone. Her final months were a quiet reflection on a life that had been anything but. She passed away on December 16, 705 CE, at the age of 81. Her death, while a quiet end to a tumultuous life, did not end the debate about her legacy. Upon her death, her son ordered that she be buried with full imperial honors. Her tomb, the Qianling Mausoleum, is one of the most magnificent in China, a testament to her importance. But perhaps the most telling aspect of her legacy is the monument that stands before her tomb, a giant blank stone tablet. This monument, the Spirit Way Stele, was left intentionally blank. It was a conscious decision, a final, dramatic statement that her accomplishments were too great and too complex to be summarized in a simple epitaph. It was left to history to write her story. Her reign, while controversial, had a lasting impact. She had opened up the government to new talent, promoted the arts and literature, and proven that a woman could rule a vast empire with an iron fist and a keen mind. Her legacy would be debated for centuries, and to this day, she remains one of the most fascinating and polarizing figures in Chinese history. She was a ruler who challenged the very foundations of her society, and her story is a testament to the power of ambition, intellect, and the human will to defy the constraints of tradition. The final chapter of Wu Zetian's story is not about her death, but about her enduring impact. Her reign, though brief in the grand sweep of Chinese history, left an indelible mark on the empire she ruled. She was the only female emperor in a 2,000-year-long dynastic tradition, and her legacy is a complex tapestry woven with threads of brutal tyranny, administrative genius, and profound cultural transformation. To truly understand her, we must look beyond the legends and the controversies and examine the long-term consequences of her actions. First and foremost, Wu Zetian's most lasting contribution was her reform of the civil service examination system. While the system existed before her, she expanded it dramatically, making it the primary method for selecting government officials. She broke the stranglehold of the old aristocratic families on power and opened up the bureaucracy to a new class of talented individuals from humble backgrounds. This policy, based on merit rather than birth, fundamentally reshaped the structure of Chinese governance. It created a more efficient and capable bureaucracy that was loyal to the central government. This system would continue for another 13 centuries, becoming a cornerstone of Chinese imperial administration and a model for civil service systems around the world. Her political legacy is more ambiguous. She seized power through a combination of intellect, manipulation, and ruthless violence. She created a powerful secret police and was responsible for the deaths of many of her political rivals, including members of her own family. However, she also governed a vast empire with an iron fist, ensuring a period of relative stability and prosperity. Her reign was a time of internal peace and economic growth. The population increased, agricultural production was stable, and the empire's borders were secure. She was a strong and effective leader, and under her rule, China continued to flourish as the most powerful and cultured nation in the world. Culturally, Wu Zetian's reign was a high point. Her patronage of Buddhism had a profound and lasting impact on the religious landscape of China. The magnificent Longmen grottos are a testament to her devotion and her desire to use religion to legitimize her rule. She encouraged the translation of Buddhist texts and the construction of temples, and she elevated Buddhism to a position of prominence that it had not enjoyed before. Her support for scholars and her love of poetry also contributed to the cultural flowering of the Tang Dynasty, an era that is still celebrated today for its magnificent art and literature. Her personal legacy, however, remains the most controversial. Was she a hero or a villain? Her detractors, mostly male Confucian scholars writing after her death, painted her as a tyrannical usurper, a heartless murderer who violated the natural order of things. They focused on her ruthlessness and her unconventional path to power, arguing that her gender alone made her unfit to rule. Her supporters, on the other hand, saw her as a brilliant and capable ruler who was ahead of her time. They pointed to her reforms, her patronage of the arts, and her effective governance as proof of her genius. The blank stele at her tomb is a fitting metaphor for her legacy. It is a monument that invites us to draw our own conclusions. It forces us to confront the complexity of her life and to grapple with the fact that a single individual can be both a creator and a destroyer. She was a woman who dared to sit on the dragon throne, a ruler who challenged the very foundations of her society, and in doing so, she changed the course of Chinese history forever. As you drift into sleep, let the image of that vast empty stone be a reminder that history is not a simple story of heroes and villains. It is a complex, beautiful, and often contradictory narrative, one that we must continue to explore with open minds and quiet reflection.